So we have also seen how do we apply CSS with the different ways, like CSS class, inline CSS, and applying styling to the HTML tag directly. Today we're going to learn about how do we conditionally render templates in LWC, right? Like HTML templates. So to render these templates or to render piece of UI or specific section based on some conditions uh, in HTML. So how do we do that? First of all, if we want to render it, we need some variables, right? To make it to check the conditions at the backend, and those conditions get reflected on the UI side in the HTML file, and based on those conditions, we can render our HTML template. So what I'll do is I'll create a new Lightning Web component here for this, and then we'll see the example. I'm creating new Lightning Web component. I'm just giving it bash3 and I'll hit enter. So it will get created for me in the same folder. Okay. So these are the three files by default got created for me. So what I'll do is, first of all, I will just take this out. So as we know, why do we need this, right? I'm just taking it, and what I'll do is I'll go back to the UI and I'll take one simply lightning card. Into this lightning card, I'm just giving title conditional rendering sample. So to render this, right, I'm just referencing whatever things I have here. So I'm just checking one input here. First of all, in the JavaScript, right, I'm just taking this variable in the JS class. Div display false. Okay. And on the UI side, I'm just taking one lightning input, which is type of checkbox. We can have like multiple types here. We can put like text, number. Based on requirement, we can have multiple types here. So on change, right? On change, one method will be called from here. I'm just writing the definition for the method here. And what I'll do is I'm just setting value as we're going to access value of that checkbox here. What I'll do is event dot target dot. I hope checked. So for the checkbox, we have checked attribute that we can refer here, right? To access value of checkbox here based on click and on click here. And here, so to render, like we have seen in the Visual Force pages and Aura components, right? We need Aura E for in Visual Force. We use output panel or something like that, right? To render the things on the UI level. So here we have to use the template tag only to render the things. Okay. So you can just take another template and you can simply have this sorry, I'm just taking this variable. If condition is true, it will, this is in true block. And what I'll do is I'll simply deploy this code to the org. Let me go here and embed that component here. I'm just searching for that component here. So this component is available. I'm just pulling it and putting it here. And I'll simply save this. Changes saved. Getting back to the page, home page. You can see this checkbox appeared over here. Okay, something went wrong. Let me take this, and I don't think this is due to that. Look. Okay, let's refresh it and let's see.
Nilesh, you have missed this keyword in JS.
Yeah, maybe that can be the reason. Thank you. Show div handler. Okay, let's refresh it. Yeah. So if you guys can see, right, I have declared this variable, right? So before we use this, right? If you want to use this variable, somewhere in your class, right? In any method, we have to reference that keyword with this dot. So you're targeting that the variable from this class level. So this variable is belong to this class, and we are just getting this value from the on change event, right? From the UI side, we have taken this input, lightning input checkbox, type of checkbox, and on change. We are calling one JavaScript method here. Into that, we are just taking, or we are accessing value of this. And on the UI side, we have just taken this simple template, and the template, we are putting this condition. If true, then print this. And if we want to have if else, if false, just deploying this and refreshing it. Let's see the output. By default, we have declared that particular variable as false. So by default, this block will get display over here. And if we make it true, you guys can see I'm here in the true block, and again it will get rendered based on your condition or based on your checked unchecked. So similarly, you can build same logic as per your requirement. If you want to put, or if you want to render some part of UI based on some conditions at the from the JavaScript side, you can simply do the things in the method, change on change, or whatever logic you want to build. You can just put those conditions. If you want to check any other variables as well, right, you can simply put if else statements, like conditional statements, and then make this variable true, set to true conditionally, and then it will automatically get rendered over here. So this is very basic example where we can conditionally display and hide these things, show hide things. I hope everybody is getting. So you guys can simply see this logic. It's a very simple. We have just taken one checkbox, and on the checkbox checked, unchecked, we are calling this JavaScript method. In the JavaScript method, we are just making it check. Whatever value is there, that will get assigned to this variable. Okay. And on the UI side, we have taken these two templates with these attributes. If true, again value, and into this block, whatever things you have to print or you have to display, you can put it here. And same in the else part, you can check this if false. If this variable is false, then you can simply put it like this. So next thing, now loops. So we have seen in the JavaScript, right, at the backend, how do we iterate over the list of variables and list of object type of variables, right? List of or arrays in JavaScript. So now we're going to learn how do we iterate, or how do we iterate over this arrays or list on the UI side, right? So I'll just explain this. There are different ways to iterate over the list or arrays in JavaScript or in LWC. So one of the type is for each. So we can simply use, I'll show you how do we play with it in the UI side. So again, we will be using the template tag over here on the HTML site, HTML file, in which we will be using this for each attribute and we will refer the list which will be coming from the JavaScript class, and this is the for item which will be one item from this list. Similarly, we have similarly in the Apex and JavaScript, right? We have seen that we are iterating over the list, and one of the item will get assigned to this variable, right? Iterable variable, and then we will access whatever value of this record, right? Record available, we can print it here. So let me explain you this first. So we have this for each attribute where we will be referencing the list of arrays or list of objects, and then we have index as well, which will give you the index of the current record. And we have one more thing here in LWC, that is key. So if we don't mention this, we cannot go ahead with this. We cannot iterate over the list and arrays in LWC. Like, we have to mention this thing in your iteration first of all. So we have to mention as a key, so which will be your unique ID or unique property or unique value from your list or a record, we can say. So second thing, first of all, I will show you this in how do we use this, and then we'll go ahead with this second point, like iterator. This is another way to iterate for loop on the UI in HTML side. So let's do it for the first for each, and let's see. So I'm just copying the things. So it will just save our time. So that's why I'm just copying the things. But you guys can understand. I'll explain you. I will tell you. I'll be coming to this point. What is this track is? Okay. So for now, I'm just putting it here. I'll be coming to that part. But for now, I'm just declaring this list of string here with this track decorator. It's one of the decorators. So we have decorators like track, wire, and APIs. I'll be explaining. So like we have already seen, right? How do we declare list? So this is how list of strings I have taken, like Jaipur, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai. I'm adding one more thing here, Pune. Okay, and it's a city list. So these are the different cities we're putting into it one list variable. Okay, and what we are doing here is okay. So I have just taken this list of strings. Okay, and in the UI side, if you guys can see, I have taken one template and iterator. Okay, so as I mentioned, right, if I comment it out and try to save this, I will just try to deploy it. It will save, but if I try to put it value So I can see it. Still I can see it. Okay, so what I'll do is let me use keys and let's see. So you guys simply can see these variables. So key is for as I remember, right? To if any items is changed in list, right? So we can access that attribute by using this key. That key will indicate that this particular item is changed in this list, and we can do something on those change of those attribute, change of those items. But so this is the syntax of simple iterator. So this is the way, the first way of, okay, I missed something. Sorry, I want to explain this, but okay, we will keep this, that as well. For each, okay, we were looking at for each. I explained you for each. So forget about this. I'll be coming to this for each, right? For each, the city list for item. So what will happen here? From this list, one by one item will get assigned to this variable, and we can access the properties of this record here, and we can print it, simply print it. Let me push it. I don't think we have pushed it. Okay, yes, we have pushed it. So you can see it's printing 2 times because we're using for each here and iterator. So you guys will see, I mean, like if we are doing same thing with this, so what's the difference in between these two, right? Iterator and for each. So this is the difference between for each and iterator. So in iterator, we again have index, but here in iterator, we can see, or we can figure out which one is the first element in your list and which one is the last element in your list while iterating. So based on first and last item in your list, if we want to have some logic, if we have that kind of business requirement, if you want to do something, if this is the first element, do something with that or do something. So we can simply identify this first attribute in your iterator, and similar thing with the last element. If you want to do something on that last item from your list, you can go ahead with this iterator. So I'll show you that. I have this reference here, which is from again the standard documentation. I'll just open it and hopefully we will find one example there for first and last. So you guys can see, right, by using this for each, we can simply do this, and at the back end, this list is, we are forming one list. We will be coming to this. I'll be showing this as well. So here, right, this is how the first element and last element, right? First item from the list, we can apply this class, right? And if your item is last, we can apply this class, or if we want to do some other things based on this, if true it dot first and it dot last. So the syntax, here syntax changes are there, like iterator, we are using it and we are assigning this contacts as a list. And how we can access the variables on the UI side, you have to use it dot value. So if you guys can see, it dot value dot title. So it dot value will give you one record of list, one record from that list. And if you want to access the attribute from that record, right, you can just put a dot and dot title like this. So let's take this example. So as we have already seen, right, how do we declare list of object or array of object? For time being, I'm just taking this contacts, and I'll simply take this out. So you guys, if you want to go ahead with like from yourself, you can simply search for the Lightning Web Component Developer Guide, and from this point, right, from the introducing Lightning Web Components, you'll find each and every topic here with the example and with the good explanation, which you can understand. But the thing is, you want to try it out yourself until you won't be able to understand it properly, or hands-on practice will help you to you know get things uh, quickly. Okay, I'll just, instead of these things, I'll just put it like this. I'm using here for each. I'll just comment it. I will deploy this. So you guys can see this list is getting printed over here. Uh, how we have, see, we're using li tag. So in this HTML file, right, in LWC, you can do whole thing with the HTML, but you have to do it in the template tag only. You can simply write HTML, all that. You can also have custom tables as well. By using HTML tags, you can embed those tags, you can implement everything from HTML into this HTML file, and you can play with this standard JavaScript, right, from the backend side. So like you guys can see, we have declared this records list of object, right, in which we have ID property, name property, title property, and these are the three records that we are accessing over here in the UI, and we are iterating on it. We are using for each over here, but if we want to go ahead with the iterator, right? So you guys can see I'm just taking out. So simply you guys can print it like this. I'm just using these. e.value.name, and let me deploy this. You guys can see it's printing in 2 times. First one is for each, and second one is iterator. So this is how we can iterate over the list. Simple list, we have seen both the ways, like a simple list and list of object or array of object. You can simply form the array like this by comma separated with the curly braces, and then into that you can define the properties as a key value pair, as we have seen it, right? And then you can simply refer that array over here like this. Iterator it contacts, and then you can print it like this. So again, one more thing I would like to show you here. Is there? So like in Aura, right, we have seen Salesforce has already built some component, standard component, which we can refer in our actual business requirements if we have similar kind of requirements, right? You guys can see these are Aura components. Also, you will find some LWC component as well here. See, these are web components like which we can refer directly in with our actual requirement, like lighting data table. We can also see similar kind of things. We will be going through it. We'll be coming to that, but I will like to show you. So we have also this component library where you guys can refer this library for your actual implementation. You guys can see this code and the JavaScript code behind this HTML, behind this, right? So this is the basic data table with the along with this checkboxes. So you guys simply can take this out and put it in your actual requirement, and you can modify this. Uh, you can modify this data table as per your business requirement. So any doubts, guys, so far? I hope everybody is getting all things. Let me see what's next. Okay, decorators. Okay, so if you don't have any doubt, we are moving to this decorators. So what do you mean by decorators? So like in the Apex, we have different access modifiers like private, protected, public, and global. So similarly in the JavaScript, like in the LWC, we have different decorators which will be define the access level to the particular variable or to the variable. So before we use them in LWC, we need to import those access variables or decorators here, like track. Track is one of them, API is one of them, and wire is one of them. So before we use them in our code, we have to import them from the LWC model. So we can import this in this statement by comma separated, like track, API, and wire. Then and then we will be able to use them in our code. So API. So API is nothing but your public property. So to mention or to define the property as a or a variable or list of variables or list of object or array, if you want to define it publicly, you can use the API decorator. So by using this API, right, we can access the variables from one LWC component to another LWC. If you want to communicate and share the resources between two components, share the variables in between two components, then we can use this API decorator to make it public. Track. What is track is? Track is nothing but your private property. So you guys can see we have variables where track is not there, and we have variables or we have list here which is declared as a track. So what's the difference between in these two? Why do we need track here? Why we have not used track here? So a couple of releases back, track was mandatory for each and every variable in JavaScript if we want to make it private and reactive property, meaning if you want to track the changes happen to this particular variable or property, and if you want to see the changes are getting reflected over the UI side, we were using track property for each and every variable in the JavaScript for the private properties. Private meaning this whatever variables we have declared as a track, which will be accessible within this JavaScript class only, the current Lightning Web component only. It will not be accessible outside this Lightning Web component. So if you want to communicate from one LWC component to another LWC component, it will not be available for you. So for that, we have @API property, which is nothing but your public property. So let's come back to this difference between this track, @track, and non-track variables. So couple of releases back, Salesforce has made some changes around this track attribute. So they modified definition of this. So now we don't need to define this track attribute, or we don't need to use decorator for each and every variable in JavaScript, which we want to have is a private property. So it's for the primitive data types, we don't need to declare the variables as a track or as a private property. By default, those properties will be reactive, meaning we will be able to track the changes happen to these primary data types. Okay, but if we are using the list and we are iterating this list over the UI in the HTML template, and let's say let's take example of this, right? This is the array, right? And if any element or any attribute is changed from any item in this array, and if you want to track it, if you want to track the change and get reflected over the UI side on the HTML template, you need to mention this track at the rate track for the arrays or array of object, not for the primitive data types. Means say for this boolean, string, integer, whatever properties are rest of the properties, we don't need to make those variables as a track. Those will be accessible in the whole code or in the whole class by default. But if you want to make, if you want to track these changes, right? Track the changes happen to these variables or any of the properties of this record from this list of object or list or arrays. You need to make it as a track to track those changes. We'll see that with example. We'll see that with example. So this is what about track. Previously it was not mandatory, means it was mandatory, but currently it's not mandatory. So by default all the properties are tracked, but if you want to track the changes of these arrays and object, we want to use track property. If you don't use it and you have declared these objects and arrays of object, you won't be able to track the changes happen to that particular element from the array, or you will not see the updated list on your UI site. Now wire. So this is the property which will read the Salesforce data or which will pull the data from the Salesforce or Apex. If we want to fetch data from the database from the Apex site, we can use this wire property, wire decorator, to get the data, to fetch the data from the Apex class or to Apex from the Apex controller. So once it will automatically renders the changes happen at the backend, and it will display the data on the HTML template. So wire, we have different ways. We'll definitely will see with the examples and how do we utilize this wire. Okay, so let's see the example quickly. We have 10 minutes, so we can cover it, I think. So what I'll do is I will clear these things. Okay, I'll just comment it out. I'm just taking example from here. So if you guys can see, I have taken one variable, just a object type of variable. I haven't refer any decorator. I haven't mentioned with this decorator. So I'm just simply taking one variable message into it. What I'm doing is, this is my key, default message, and for that key I'm assigning this this string, and comma, here is my second attribute or second key, which is having blank value. Okay, so this is my object variable, which is having these two attributes, default message and new message. What I'm doing is, on the UI side, okay, so I have taken one lightning input type of text, and value for that lightning input is coming from the default message. Okay, from the message object type of variable. I'm accessing this property of message variable, and on change of it, what I'm doing here is event new message equal to event dot target dot value. Okay, let's see. So what I did is, you guys can see this is our object type of variable, in which we have by default we have taken these two attributes. One of attribute is having value by default, which we are calling as a default message, and another is new message, which is having blank value. And the UI side, we have taken one lightning input type of text, which is having default message value from the message object, and on change of this lightning input, we're calling one JavaScript method, and whatever value we are getting from that lightning input, we are just assigning these to this dot message dot new message. We are just assigning that value to this attribute of the message variable, and here we are just printing this default message dot default message, and new message dot new message. Let's see the result on the UI side. So here you guys can see that the input is there, and by default it's populating value from the default message. Like as we have set up this default value here, right? So by default it's populating here in the UI side, and also we are printing this default message and new message. As a new message is empty, so that's why it's showing as empty. But sorry, if I change something, you guys cannot see any changes. Why we are not seeing any changes? Even though we have mentioned this on change method here, right? On change method we are calling one, sorry, on change event we are calling one method here, handle change, and into that handle change what we are doing here is we are assigning whatever value we're getting from that event, right? Event target that value, we are assigning that value to the new message. So the reason behind is we are using this variable as object variable. And as I mentioned, if we want to track the changes happen between these, right? Any of the properties, we need to mention this variable as a track variable. You guys can see till now we are not able to see any changes in the new message, because what we are doing here is we are assigning value to the new message, so it should get reflected over in the new message at least. But if I refresh it, I'm just making that duplicate, so we'll see all the changes. Now you guys can see, right? Whatever changes I'm doing, you guys can see it. New message. See? But here in the previous tab, right, it's not refreshed, so definitely it will not print anything. So this is the difference between trackable property and non-trackable property. So if you want to track the changes happen to the object type of variable or array type of variables, you have to have defined that property with the track decorator. If I again take it out and if I deploy this change, and if I go back to this screen, I'll just refresh this, and you'll again see whatever things I'm typing, it's not getting reflected on the UI side. So this is the difference between trackable and non-trackable. I hope everybody understood this. You guys are good with this track, right? I will be sharing the assignment for you guys, so you guys will get hands-on practice, and I hope everybody is doing the assignment, so they'll get some hands-on. Any doubts, guys? So we are short with the timing. So in the next session, we'll be looking at EPIs and wire type of variables or wire type of decorators. And stop my sharing. And looks like we are good to close the session. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in the next session.